Houston was never supposed to be the city where Park Hyun-Soo lost his mind. He was the most dangerous man in the Korean criminal world. Disciplined, ruthless, untouchable. And tonight, he had come to do one thing: end a woman's life. But the moment he laid eyes on her, the plan fell apart. Because the woman he had flown across the world to destroy was the most feared drug queen the American South had ever seen. And without warning, she made a stone-cold killer forget everything he knew about himself. Back in Seoul, they didn't say Park Hyun-Soo's name loudly. They said it like a prayer you hoped you never had to finish. At just 31 years old, he commanded the most feared criminal organization on the Asian continent. The Cheongma Brotherhood. Black horses. That's what the name meant. And just like black horses, they moved fast, they moved silently, and by the time you heard them coming, it was already over. The Brotherhood controlled seaports from Busan to Shanghai, underground gambling houses across Southeast Asia, and shipping corridors that governments pretended didn't exist. Hyun-Soo had taken over after his older brother was killed in a boardroom ambush 3 years earlier. And where his brother had been calculating, Hyun-Soo was merciless. He didn't believe in second chances. He believed in outcomes. So when reports landed on his desk about a woman in Texas intercepting Brotherhood cargo shipments, he didn't call a meeting. He didn't send a team. He booked a private flight. Because whoever was bold enough to reach into the Brotherhood's pockets deserved to see his face before the end. Texas had always been a land of legends. Big sky, big oil, big crime. Cartels had tried to own it. Gangs had bled for it. Corrupt politicians had sold pieces of it for decades. But in the last 4 years, a new name had quietly risen above all the noise. Nadia Owens. Nobody could fully trace how she did it. 3 years ago, she was running a mid-level operation out of San Antonio that most people in the underworld barely noticed. Now, she owned the underground drug trade from the Gulf Coast to the New Mexico border. Her network ran through Houston, San Antonio, El Paso, and stretched into Louisiana. Federal agents had opened 4 separate investigations into her operations. All 4 had been quietly dropped. Rival organizations had sent people to remove her. Those people had never come back with good news. What made Nadia truly frightening wasn't the violence. It was the fact that she barely needed it. She was 3 steps ahead of everyone around her. She hired the right people, paid them well, and treated loyalty like the most valuable currency in existence. Which meant betrayal in her world was not just dangerous. It was nearly impossible. Nearly. Hyun-Soo landed in Houston on a Tuesday night. No security detail. No chartered SUV convoy. Just a dark overcoat, a calm expression, and the kind of quiet confidence that only comes from never having lost. His contact in the city had tracked Nadia's movements carefully. She would be at a members-only lounge in the Midtown district that evening. The place had no sign outside. You either knew where it was or you didn't belong there. From the street it looked like a converted warehouse. Unremarkable. Forgettable. But the moment Hyun-Soo stepped inside, the world changed. Dark marble floors. Low golden lighting. Leather and mahogany everywhere. The kind of room that whispered money without ever raising its voice. A live jazz quartet played in the corner. People moved like they owned the air around them. Hyun-Soo scanned the room. Every instinct he had built over a decade in the criminal world fired at once. This woman had constructed a fortress disguised as a lounge. Every corner had eyes. Every exit was watched. She was careful. Dangerously careful. And men who became the best at what they did knew exactly what that meant. She had survived long enough to be worth the trip. He found her without looking too hard. She was seated on a raised platform near the back of the room, partially elevated above the main floor. Not quite a throne, but close enough. Nadia Owens wore a deep burgundy dress and no jewelry except for one thin gold ring on her right hand. She didn't need to be loud. The room organized itself around her. People leaned in when they spoke to her. They laughed only when she allowed space for it. And when she glanced across the room, she looked like someone who had never once been caught off guard. Hyun-Soo stood near the bar and watched. He was mapping her, studying the angles, calculating the exit. It was what he always did. And then she turned, all the way across the room, and looked directly at him. Not searching, not startled. Just certain. Like she had known he was there the whole time and had simply been waiting for him to stop pretending otherwise. The corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something sharper than that. She crossed the room herself. Unhurried. The crowd parted without her asking. When she reached him, she didn't extend a hand. She simply stood close enough to speak quietly and looked at him the way people look at things they have already decided about. Seoul is a long way to fly for a Tuesday night, she said. Hyun-Soo's expression didn't change. You were expecting me. I was expecting someone, she said. When the Cheongma Brotherhood loses 3 shipments in 2 months, they don't send letters. Her voice was smooth. Even. Like water over stone. Park Hyun-Soo, she said. Just his name. No question attached to it. He studied her face. And you know why I'm here. She picked up a glass from a passing tray without breaking eye contact. You think I've been raiding your cargo? I know you have. She tilted her head slightly. You know what you were told. Something in the way she said it made him pause. Just for a fraction of a second. But she noticed. She noticed everything. The music shifted. The room breathed around them. Hyun-Soo could have ended this conversation in 3 seconds. He had done harder things in quieter rooms. But something was holding him still. He told himself it was caution. He was already beginning to suspect it was something else. She led him to a private room behind the main lounge. Heavy door. No windows. 2 chairs and a table between them. She sat first. He stood for a moment before taking the seat across from her. Nadia poured 2 glasses of bourbon from the bottle already on the table. Pushed one toward him. He didn't touch it. You came here to kill me, she said. Flat. Factual. Yes. She looked at him for a long moment. I'm still breathing. He said nothing. That means something in your mind shifted, she continued. Which means you're still open to information. She leaned forward slightly. So let me give you some. She slid a folder across the table. It was thick. Organized. Inside were printed photographs, shipping manifests, intercepted communications, and a detailed timeline going back nearly 8 months. Your cargo has been missing, she said, because the Reyes cartel has been rerouting it. Hyun-Soo's eyes didn't move from her face. The Reyes cartel. Based out of Monterrey, she said. One of the most aggressive operations in Mexico right now. They've been systematically infiltrating Brotherhood distribution lines at the Texas entry points. She tapped the photographs. They've replaced Brotherhood product with their own at 3 separate warehouses, bribed 2 of your American contacts, and constructed a paper trail designed to make it look like a Texas-based operator was responsible. She looked at him steadily. That Texas-based operator being me. Hyun-Soo pulled the folder toward him. He read in silence for nearly 4 minutes. Every document was detailed. Every timeline was supported. The locations matched transit records he had reviewed himself on the flight over. He turned a page. Then another. His face remained completely still. But inside, something cold and certain was rearranging itself. Because if this was accurate, he had been played. And Nadia Owens hadn't been stealing from him. She had been the only one in Texas with enough reach to even see what was happening. He closed the folder. Why would you protect Brotherhood cargo? She sat back. I wasn't protecting your cargo, she said. I was protecting my territory. Riz wants Texas. They can't have it. She paused. Your routes run through my city. If they collapse, mine weaken. It's not personal. It's geography. He looked at her for a long moment. And yet you built a file on me. I built files on everyone who might walk through that door one day wanting me dead, she said simply. It's called staying alive. The silence between them lasted longer than most silences do. 2 people. 1 table. An entire world of violence on either side of a potential decision. Hyun-Soo's jaw was set. Even if every word in that folder is true. You understand what you're asking by telling me this. I'm not asking anything yet, she said. You will. She almost smiled. The Reyes cartel has a supply chain running across 4 states, she said. They have connections inside 3 federal agencies, and they've been expanding north for 2 years. They're not a problem I can solve alone. She looked at him directly. And you can't dismantle their Texas operations from Seoul. He already knew she was right. He hated that he already knew. You want a joint operation, he said. I want the Reyes cartel removed from this region permanently, she said. What we call the arrangement is secondary. Quiet again. Hyun-Soo turned the bourbon glass slowly without picking it up. Then he picked it up and drank. It wasn't agreement, but it wasn't a no. And in the language they both spoke, that was already something. What followed over the next 6 weeks was unlike anything the Texas underworld had witnessed. The Cheongma Brotherhood brought infrastructure, intelligence networks, and the kind of clinical efficiency that came from running operations across 12 countries. Nadia brought something harder to quantify but just as essential. She knew every block, every contact, every pressure point in the region. She knew which law enforcement officers were genuinely dangerous and which ones were theater. She knew where the Reyes supply lines were soft and where they were reinforced. Together they were surgical. A Reyes warehouse in Laredo disappeared one night without a trace. A key distribution network in Corpus Christi collapsed from the inside when 3 of its coordinators simultaneously vanished. Supply chains that had taken Reyes 2 years to build were dismantled in weeks. But operations do something to people who run them together. Late nights and shared intelligence briefings stretched into long conversations. Disagreements about tactics turned into arguments that turned into something almost resembling mutual respect, which for 2 people who respected almost no one was significant. Hyun-Soo began to notice things he had no business noticing. The way Nadia thought 3 moves ahead of a problem before she even named it aloud. The way she listened completely still before she spoke. The way she commanded rooms without raising her voice or needing anyone to announce her. He had known powerful people his entire life. He had never known one like her. It was a rooftop, not a boardroom, where things finally shifted. The Houston skyline at night was not Seoul. But there was something in the spread of lights below them that felt like the same language spoken with a different accent. Nadia stood at the edge of the rooftop and looked out at the city like it was something she had built herself. Maybe in some ways she had. You're leaving after this is over, she said. It wasn't a question. Hyun-Soo stood beside her, close enough that the distance felt deliberate. That was always the plan, he said. She nodded slowly. Most people in my world either want what I have or they're afraid of what I am, she said quietly. Sometimes both. And me. She turned to look at him. You're the first person in a very long time who looked at me and just saw a person. The city hummed below them. No strategy in the air between them now. No positioning. Just 2 people standing at the edge of something neither of them had words for yet. He reached over. His hand found hers on the railing. She looked down at it. Then she left it there. Power invites betrayal the way light invites moths. It took them longer to find the leak than it should have. His name was Darius Cole. Nadia's head of ground logistics. 3 years of loyalty. Excellent instincts. And for the last 4 months, he had been feeding the Reyes cartel everything. The attack came on a Friday just past midnight. The safe house outside Katy, Texas, lit up like a combat zone. Vehicles blocked both ends of the road. Armed men moved through the property in coordinated waves. What they had not accounted for was that Nadia's properties were never truly safe houses. They were prepared positions. And Hyun-Soo had spent a decade operating in far worse conditions than a Texas suburb. The engagement lasted 11 minutes. When the property fell quiet again, the Reyes strike team had failed completely. Darius Cole did not survive the night. And the Reyes cartel had shown its hand too early. They moved on the Reyes leadership within 72 hours. A decommissioned processing plant south of San Antonio. The operation was quiet going in and loud in the middle and absolute by the end. Rodrigo Reyes, the cartel's operational head in the United States, was finished before sunrise. His network, without its central architecture, began fracturing within days. The pieces that remained were too small and too scattered to threaten anything. Texas exhaled. They stood in the empty plant afterward. Dust still settling. Silence flooding back in. Nadia looked at him in the half-light coming through the high broken windows. You could claim all of this, she said. Everything I built. The Brotherhood has the muscle to hold it. Hyun-Soo looked around the space for a moment. Then he looked at her. I came here to neutralize a threat. And you were never the threat. She held his gaze. So what now? He stepped forward. I spent my entire life building something that belongs to no one but itself, he said. No one to share it with. No one who understands the weight of it. He was close enough now that the space between them was a choice. I came here to end something. He looked at her steadily. I'd rather begin something instead. Nadia Owens, the woman who had outmaneuvered federal agents, buried rival operations, and once made an entire cartel abandon a Texas expansion simply by existing, had nothing to say. For the first time in longer than she could remember. Months passed. The criminal world, which notices everything eventually, began to register a shift. A new kind of power had taken shape in the American South. Not a cartel. Not a syndicate operating from a distance. Something that had roots in both worlds and answered to no single tradition. Harder to map. Harder to threaten. Harder to touch. Built by a man who had flown across the world to deliver an ending. And a woman who had been ready for him before he landed. The Cheongma Brotherhood and the Texas network didn't merge. They aligned. Like two tectonic plates settling into place. And the name that traveled quietly through underground networks from Houston to Hong Kong was never one name. It was always two. Because the most dangerous thing in their world was no longer a weapon or a shipment or an army. It was the two people who had looked at each other across a crowded room with destruction in mind, and chosen something harder. Something rare. Something that made them, in every way that mattered, completely unstoppable. If this story kept you locked in from the first line to the last, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. Subscribe to City of Tales if you want more stories like this dropped every week. And comment below. Who did you respect more, the Brotherhood boss or the Queen of Texas? I read every single one. See you in the next story.